Something bugging you? Come on in. Let's go for a drive. All right, I'm on my way to pick up my friend, Mr. Mike Sherrard, who wrote a book called Relational Apologetics that I think would help me with a few things that some of my students have been bugging me about. Here he is, Mr. Mike Sherrard. Hello, Mr. Mike. Hop on in.
Oh my gosh, what the heck is this?
Thanks for joining me and Roscoe today.
Man, I am really, well, I don't know what I am, if I'm happy or not, because I love comedians in cars getting coffee, and I'm not quite sure what you're doing here. What is this, like, apologists and automobiles getting anxious because they're in your death trap here? Or what?
Something like that. This is definitely not the safest car, but apologetics is not necessarily the safest occupation to get into either.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Nor the most lucrative. That's why we're in cars like this.
Yes, this is what I can afford in ministry. No, okay, so so we do this thing called What's Bugging You. I've got an issue that's bugging me, bugging some of my students, and I thought with your expertise you might be able to lend your expertise.
That's assuming I stay conscious with all these gas fumes in this car.
Roscoe, look, don't offend Roscoe.
That's right.
There is an eject button somewhere in this vehicle.
My bad. My bad, Roscoe.
So you gotta treat him well. And by the way, this is high speed on the wipers.
Okay, nice.
So here's the issue. All right. So students come to us. We talk. We teach. We train them up to defend the faith, to gain confidence. And then they go back home and they try to use some of the arguments that they learn, and the real life conversations just don't go as they plan. It's like, oh, now I'm gonna go talk to Uncle Bob and I'm gonna convince him to become a Christian, and then the conversation is just messy. It doesn't go A, B, C, done. Okay, now the person's a Christian. So
it's like. Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
That's fine.
It's like, when you get your first magician set, and you're like, oh, this is going to impress everyone.
This is exactly, yes.
Whenever you learn apologetics, you walk away sometimes with this overinflated sense of confidence of, wait till you hear this argument, and then you don't even use it right, or it just doesn't have the same effect that you thought it would. And
yes.
It's kind of a wah-wah moment.
That is exactly. So how do we deal with this? How do we take the truth, the arguments that point us to real logical truth of this reality, that we can be confident that there is a God and that God is this particular way in the Bible line, all of these kinds of things that we learn. Okay, how do we take apologetics and apply them well into conversations and relationships that we have?
Yeah.
Maybe you just give us some insight on that and point us in the right direction.
So, right, apologetics being the defense of the Christian faith, being able to give good reasons for why you believe what you believe, but also having the ability to answer good questions from people that don't believe in God. It's a really good desire to want to be able to use apologetics. A couple of the problems that we have, though, is often that the context in which we learn apologetics doesn't translate well to the context or the settings that we want to use apologetics. Like, you go to a conference and you hear a lecture or a debate and you're just blown away. You take pages and pages of notes.
Yeah.
And then you find yourself in your dorm room or at the coffee shop or over Thanksgiving dinner with your Aunt Sally that doesn't believe in the reliability of the Bible, and now you're giving a lecture because that's kind of the environment that you learned it in.
As if you can say, okay, everybody, go ahead and take a seat. I'm going to stand up here on the stage and give you all a talk, and that's not going to go well. And
so the simple idea here is that the skills of lecture or debate are good and useful, but they're decidedly different from the skills that we need in almost all of the apologetic opportunities that we have. Like in a car with our friend, you're not going to give a lecture and you're not going to give a debate. You need a different set of skills. So years ago, when I started getting into apologetics, and where are you taking me?
Well, I was going to go down that road and it was closed.
Okay, so
that's Manitou for
we're
us.
off-roading it now. So years ago, when I started getting into apologetics, that's just one of the things I observed, that where I'm learning apologetics isn't where I'm going to be using apologetics. And so I wrote a book called Relational Apologetics that focuses on a couple of things. First, your character. If you want to make a defense of the gospel, the starting place is your own personal holiness for two reasons. One, hypocrisy or just bad Christian lives is a hindrance to the gospel. It causes people to distrust our message. But moreover, when Christians do live like Jesus lived and love like Jesus loved, it is a positive sign. It's something powerful that makes people go, maybe there's something there. So relational apologetics, right? It's about your character. It's about how to have good conversations, like how to listen and ask really good questions. I say all the time, a good apologist listens and asks more questions than they make statements. So that when you do come to the third thing, your content, you know better what a person is struggling with. You know, we like to give textbook answers, but people don't hold textbook beliefs.
Right.
And so a good apologist, when they have a holy lifestyle, they have good conversation skills, they can listen, they can ask questions, they begin to understand what it is in particular that a person is having a hard time overcoming to have faith in Jesus Christ. And then that's when you really now have content that's relevant to someone.
So you're actually able to help a person get over their particular obstacles rather than this general launch into a lecture on.
Yeah.
Okay. Extremely helpful. So I've noticed that some people say,
one, I'm impressed that you can have a conversation like this and drive at the same time. Well, I would not be able to do this.
Isn't this the most common way we have conversations, like going for a drive?
I guess that's fair enough. Yeah. No,
I mean, don't you talk to your family and like the same kind of thing?
That's a good point. Maybe I just underestimated you too much.
Well,
I take back my compliment. Everybody should be able to do this.
Yeah, you can do this. You do it all the time. Okay, so Francis of Assisi is known for saying, whether he said it or not, preach the gospel and when necessary use words, which I think ties into what you were saying, like your character and your behavior is going to speak volumes. At the same time, there does have to be more than that. Conversations actually are extremely important, or when there's no content being communicated, then there's actually something lacking. But our actions can certainly hinder or help the content then that we present. Okay, so so give me then some ideas. How do you even begin a conversation in a relationship? What does this look like on an everyday basis? What kind of goals should we have when we go into conversation? Should we?
Yeah, I think asking questions again is key. A colleague of ours, Greg Kokel, wrote a book that changed my life called Tactics.
Yeah, me too.
And it's just about how to ask good questions. So, with friends, when you make statements like, I think this, it causes someone to take a defensive posture. But if you ask the same, like almost the same goal, but just asking a question, it's inviting, like, what do you think about?
Yes.
Or help me understand. Yeah. Or how you believe this, right? Tell me how you came to that belief. And questions like that are really helpful because they're just, again, they're conversational, they're relational, they're not threatening. Questions also make somebody think, and in kind of evangelistic and apologetic opportunities, that's the goal, right? We want someone to think. So asking questions can be very helpful. So on something, a topic like, modern sexuality, for example, you can just ask, powerful questions to me, like, okay, so we obviously, I think we don't see it the same way. We don't see eye to eye on this issue.
Yeah.
So how do you go about determining right and wrong? Like, what's your standard for how you decide this is a good action or this is a bad action? And let them explain it. And one of the reasons this is powerful is because, one, it gives you an understanding into more than just the soundbite that they have, right?
Yes.
Which we live in a social media world.
The goal here, when you said relational apologetics, is there is an assumption you actually desire a true relationship with this person that you are speaking to.
Right.
Whether it's a momentary relationship or a long-lasting one, they're not a project.
Right, and we don't want to just, engage in these sound bites that just destroy the other person, which, how many social media posts are. Ben Shapiro destroys. And, ideas should be destroyed, but people ought not be.
Good.
And so, anyways, asking questions is just a good way to really understand, okay, I want to understand why you think like you think. Now, one, that helps you better know how to respond or go learn. Like maybe you understand better their position. You go, it's not so shallow as I thought. There's more to their position than I thought. I actually don't know what to say. Well, that just gives you something to study on your own, or even invite your friend to study it with you. But moreover, I've had this experience, I bet you have too. When you ask somebody to explain where their belief came from or why their belief is true, it exposes for them their lack of knowledge. And I've had person after person, when I ask them that question, they'll just go,
Yeah, totally, because we live in this soundbite culture, and this is not just for the non-Christian either, is it?
No.
This is for
for us
we're
all.
just as guilty, and we have little phrases, language that we say, words that we use, and we've never really thought about what we believe, let alone why we believe it.
So for the Christian or the non-Christian, I think for most of us, we absorb our beliefs more than we formally think about them, rationally pursue them. And so it is, I think, actually a loving kind of friendship. It's a friendship that has a loving nature when you just ask questions like, okay, so how did you come to those beliefs that you have? How confident in are you? Are you really sure? What might be at stake if you're wrong? Rather than just coming with statement after statement like a sledgehammer on your friend's belief system, ask questions, be curious together, and then pursue truth in that context is way more effective than a lot of the strategies we presently employ.
Yes, totally. All right, well, this is an extremely helpful start to get us going. Where would you recommend that we go to check this out a bit further? Obviously, your book, Relational Apologetics. Where else? Point us in a direction into your organization or particular resources.
Read Tactics if you've not read it. Read Greg Kokel's book Tactics. It's fantastic. You can read my book, which is maybe more of a broader framework for what we're talking about. The ministry I run, you can find us at apologetics.org, and there's resources there driven from like kind of a cultural apologetics framework about how to pursue truth, goodness, and beauty, ultimately finding its source in Jesus Christ. And hit me up, reach out. M. Sherrard at apologetics.org. Love to help however I can with whomever I can.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming for a drive with me and Roscoe. Appreciate your time.
Anytime, assuming we both survive this one.
We'll see.